This is the book called Journey of the Kon-Tiki by Katrina Van Horn. It's a leveled reader that goes along with Lesson 25, the Climbing Mount Everest story for this week, and I'd like to share it with you since you can't have one at home. Starts with a table of contents, which is a graphic feature I should mention since that's one of our skills this week. Because this is a nonfiction book, it is giving you page numbers as far as different subject matter going along with the selection so that you know where to find different parts of the story. Introduction. Some people make journeys to increase their understanding of the world, past or present. Other people make journeys to test themselves, to find out what they're made of and what they can achieve. Some hope to do both. Thor Heyerdahl falls into this third category. Heyerdahl was an explorer from Norway. He spent much of his time dreaming up journeys, planning journeys, and making journeys. So when he got the idea to build a raft and sail across the ocean, it seemed pretty normal for him. Neither Heyerdahl nor anyone else guessed this journey would become one of the most famous adventures ever. An idea is born. Heyerdahl was curious about everything, but one thing interested him most: how animals and people first came to inhabit Polynesia, a group of islands in the South Pacific Ocean. In the late 1930s, Heyerdahl spent a year living in Polynesia. While he was there, he studied the island's plants and animals. He noticed they were a lot like the plants and animals found in South America. Heyerdahl figured out that winds and ocean currents from South America probably carried many of these species to the islands. That gave Heyerdahl an idea. Maybe the first human settlers in Polynesia came from South America too. Most scientists believed Polynesia's first settlers came from Asia, not America. Heyerdahl decided to prove they were wrong, or at least prove that his idea could be right. You can see there the map of the world. You see South America and the arrow pointing off to the left, the Polynesian islands there in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Did early settlers in Polynesia come from South America? But how? There was only one way, as Heyerdahl saw it. He'd have to travel from South America to Polynesia himself, just as the first settlers might have done. But he would not go on an airplane or a ship. No, he'd have to get there on a raft. I think we read about this on one of our workbook pages from another lesson earlier this year. Building the Kon-Tiki. Heyerdahl and a crew of 5 went to Peru in South America. There they began to build the raft they hoped would take them west across the Pacific Ocean to Polynesia, 4,300 miles away. This drawing shows a balsa wood raft from Ecuador in South America. Heyerdahl based his raft on drawings like this. Heyerdahl studied drawings from hundreds of years ago when the Spanish came to South America. He wanted to find out exactly what kind of materials and building methods people in South America used to make rafts back then. Heyerdahl was determined to build a raft exactly like one those early people might have built. The crew made their raft from balsa wood, which is plentiful in South America. They tied together 9 huge tree trunks. Each one was about 45 feet long and 2 feet wide. They laid other logs crosswise to make the raft stronger. They wedged pieces of pine between the logs to fill any big gaps. Then the crew made a mast and a sail. They also made a giant oar so they could row when there was no wind for sailing. In the rear section of the raft, they built a cabin from bamboo to protect them in bad weather. They made the cabin's roof from banana leaves. Heyerdahl then gave the raft a name, Kon-Tiki. It was the name of a leader in ancient Peru who had used a balsa wood raft to escape his enemies. Bring a close-up there of that picture. Looks like they're building the raft at that point, maybe. Supplies for the journey. Heyerdahl and his crew thought very carefully about what supplies to bring on their journey. Fresh water was first on their list. They couldn't survive long without it. Hollow pieces of bamboo served as tanks to hold the water. The crew also brought along coconuts and other fruit, sweet potatoes, and some canned foods. They knew they could catch plenty of fish along the way. The crew had only two kinds of modern equipment, a radio and watches. Fortunately, one of the crew members was an engineer who was very good with measurements. He could help estimate the raft's location by figuring out the location of the sun, moon, and stars. Setting sail. On April 28, 1947, the Kon-Tiki left Peru and headed out to sea, bound for Polynesia. After reaching deep ocean, the raft was carried along by the Humboldt Current. The Humboldt is the same strong current that carried plants and animals from South America to the islands. And the caption next to this photograph says, "A crew member near Kon-Tiki's sail during the voyage." Kon-Tiki and its crew faced danger far out in the Pacific. Adventures at sea. During their journey, the Kon-Tiki crew had at least one brush with disaster. Far out at sea, they spotted a whale shark. The enormous creature swam toward the raft and then down directly underneath it. The crew could see the slopes of the shark's back, curving down to its tail on one end of the raft and down to its giant flat head on the other end. If the shark made a sudden move, it could create a huge wave that would hit the raft like an avalanche, or the shark might lift the raft into the air, flipping it over. A whale shark like this one almost brought Kon-Tiki's voyage to a halt, which means stop. Halt means stop. Instead, the whale shark swam out from under the raft and began swimming in circles around it for more than an hour. The raft couldn't budge until the shark finally swam away. In the end, it did no harm. Maybe it was merely trying to make friends with the giant raft. The journey ends. In late July, the crew saw birds flying at high altitudes in the sky. It was a clue that land was near. And on July 30th, the crew finally got a glimpse of land, Polynesia. As the Kon-Tiki approached the islands, it struck a reef or underwater wall. Polynesian natives paddled boats out to meet the crew. They looked over the raft and asked in sign language, "Where's the engine?" The crew explained there was no engine. The crew's new Polynesian friends were shocked. Thor Heyerdahl's journey on the Kon-Tiki fascinated people around the world. Heyerdahl turned the story of his adventure into a best-selling book. But had the explorer succeeded in proving what he had set out to prove? Had he proved that Polynesia's first settlers traveled there from South America? Well, no. Most scientists thought Heyerdahl's idea was just plain wrong, and his journey did nothing to change their minds. They still believed people first migrated to Polynesia from Asia, not from South America. They had plenty of scientific evidence to back them up. But no one denies this. The Kon-Tiki's journey was an incredible feat, and an adventurer, Thor Heyerdahl, had the daring, imagination, and determination of a true explorer. Here's a photograph of an older Thor Heyerdahl, stood in front of Kon-Tiki years after his voyage. The end.